Good morning, folks. This morning I want to do some maintenance work on my dwarf northern white cedar, Thuja occidentalis Primo. So here it is. While I spin it, I'll give some care tips for this species. A lot of this comes from the care guide from Bonsai. They have a page about eastern white cedar, and maybe I'll start calling this an eastern white cedar because the scientific name is Thuja occidentalis. Occidentalis is east, so anyway, so repotting. These are best repotted in the spring. I repot mine in like mid-spring when the foliage starts to turn green. Watering. So they can handle a lot of water, and that just makes sense to me when I see western red cedar out here. They're often growing near streams and seem to appreciate lots of water. So I plant them in bonsai soil and then just trust the soil and just dump the water on. They don't mind water. You don't need to worry about overwatering them like you do pine. Let's see, when I repot them, I've taken as much as 50% off in one go, and they seem to be fine with that. So I think they handle repotting quite well. Pruning, Bonsai says early to midsummer. I've also read just pruning throughout the growing season is fine for maintenance pruning. Removing large branches, probably best to do that in fall. And wiring, I did talk about this in the kind of part one of this video where I talked about the progress of this tree. I would not wire these in the spring. I think I lost a major branch, which in the end didn't matter because it wasn't part of the final design anyway. But don't wire in the spring, wire in the late fall, or sorry, late summer. That's kind of where we're at now. We're getting to be late summer to fall and winter is when I had winter. And winter wire. So winter care, these are easy. I'll put the range map of this species up, and as you can see, these are a northern species, so they do just fine with cold weather. I kind of, for a pot this size, once temperatures start dropping below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, I provide some protection, but when it's in the 20s in the winter, it's just out on my bench. So yeah, there's some care tips for you. Prompted by viewers. I do appreciate when viewers, ask me like, hey, could you talk about this or do this? And if I have, if I can talk about it for 5 minutes, I'm happy to do so. So, what I want to do on this tree today. So you can see it's a little bushy, just a little bit. I'm not going to do anything major. I did have a guy wire right here, from here to this gin. And I took it off a few weeks ago because it looked like it was kind of cutting in, but it kind of did its job and pushed this branch down. So what I really want to do is just these pads, kind of like what I did a year ago. I have a video. The pads are just kind of getting fat and fluffy. I want to flatten the pads a little bit, perhaps shorten some of the branches. But I think it looks really good as it is right now. So I'm going to do only minor stuff, and I am going to unwire it. That's actually the first thing I'm going to do. There's some small wires on it in places, and they're just really, really small wires making just micro adjustments. So I don't mind just unwiring them like this. Yeah, so I'll start doing that. And yeah, wiring and unwiring, that takes me a while. I guess actually mainly the wiring, so I might, edit this video heavily as I'm working on this. I don't want to be rushed while working on this tree. And where I do think I might damage the tree in any way, I'll just cut the wire. And I think I might put some wire on it today. I have an idea for maybe a guy wire I'm going to put on it for another branch. But I do have a plan, and that's one thing I shared. This is kind of like part 2, and I think I'm going to have like a Thuja Primo week. So I'm going to put out part 1, the progression video of this tree, and then this is like part 2. They'll probably come out just a few days later. But anyways, what was I saying? I had a thought I wanted to share. So when I first started working on this tree, I didn't really know beyond trying to make it a triangle generally, and kind of thinning the branches, especially the biggest branches. And that's something I think I have to credit Heron's Bonsai with that idea. That is, and I've heard it since from other places, when you're styling a tree, often maybe the beginner thought is you want to keep the big branches on the tree and prune off the small branches, but that's not really the way to go. To create an impression of a bigger trunk, you often actually want to prune the biggest branches off the trunk. And that is what I did. I remember my first time on this tree, I did prune off a few big branches. And you want to leave the smaller branches because there will be a bigger difference between the thickness of the trunk and the thin branch, which will make it look more like an older tree. So you actually often use the thinnest branches on your first styling. So I'm looking for, oh, here's some wire. But I didn't have a clear plan. Now the design of this tree is pretty set. I knocked off a little foliage here, but I can see it's dead, and there is a little bit of dead foliage in here. I do clean that out periodically, but I actually get a fair amount of a little bit of back budding. I think this back bud's a little bit more than well, actually a lot more. Apparently Hinoki cypress doesn't really back bud. And I'll be honest, wiring on this it's kind of tough because the foliage is so tight. It takes me a while to do it, and it's not smash the foliage, but the foliage though itself is tough. So I feel like it's not easily knocked off. And there's more wire on here. And so yeah, again, just to reiterate in my first video, this tree is very much styled with a combination of both pruning and wiring. Voila! Alright, so I think, nope, there's another wire. Alright, there we go. Knocked off some foliage. That's fine. Nope, another wire. I had no idea there's so much wire in here. Alright, there it is. If I find more, I'll get it later. So my process, I often, I start at the bottom. I work my way up. And so maybe I'll actually position my chair a little bit so I can look at the same angle as the camera. Alright, so this pad, I know I want to take this one down. There's this big piece grown up that I'm just going to take off. And I guess with this tree, I either prune or I say, okay, could I wire that piece of foliage to make it do what I want? And like right here, I can see where I could place a wire actually and keep the foliage kind of, keep it there rather than prune it off, but just reposition it. So I think I'll leave that there. But I will just prune this a little bit back. And this is kind of covering the trunk right here, but I don't mind that, honestly. I could prune that off and expose the trunk, and that might be the right answer. I don't know, that looks pretty good when I prune that. I am gonna go ahead and just prune at least this little part off. This little piece. And maybe I'll keep a pile. Keep a pile of foliage I prune off so you can see what I've taken off. At the end I can show that. Yeah, I think I do want to open it up. So I could prune this whole branch off, honestly. Yeah. I can see myself, I'm gonna have to do a lot of just looking back. And maybe I'll also prune this that's kind of starting to cross the trunk. I'll just take the tip off. I try and do that too a lot of times, just taking the tips off, stopping that terminal shoot from extending so it'll branch a little bit. Alright, so I've been working away at the tree off camera actually, because I have to concentrate for this. Although I reached kind of I got back into the swing of it, kind of got into the flow. So I just want to zoom up on these two branches. I've kind of done the lower part of the tree for the most part. I'm sure I'll have more to touch up, but I just pruned this back quite a bit, but I have not done anything to this right here. So I wanted to show, how thick this is. and show what I'm doing in detail. So again, just the upward growing stuff. So sometimes I take off big chunks like this. Like this is pretty huge for this tree. I took that off. But for the most part, the stuff I'm taking off, it's just tiny, tiny little pieces. Because when you're working it like this, you know, something like that, when you're working at this scale, I'm not taking off big chunks of foliage. I'm just going through and thinning. And I'm not, see if I can say his name right. Yasebon Kiwa. He's kind of my guide, really. That was actually a pretty big chunk. But this part was growing with a lot of vigor, so I'm really taking it back quite a bit. Anyways, Yasebon Kiwa, he works on Hinoki cypresses. And I've just noticed when he's going through, he kind of just takes these congested areas and, you know, he'll just kind of prune out little tiny leaflets. And I like the look. You know, this is just thick and full. And so I just want to thin it. I'm just thinning it. With definitely thinning more the upward growing branches. It's kind of hard actually to film this tree too, because it's just subtle little things I'm doing. You know, actually in this case, this branch, I'm gonna make a big cut here. Yeah. So that's actually one of the biggest cuts I've made on this tree, and that's partly prompted by this. This is so vigorous and strong, was so big. It's kind of why I wanted to show it. So that really it's flattened it quite a bit. And I'll be honest, I mean, I think it's a ton of fun. It's very much, you know, the film that so many people were inspired by as kids. It's very much like a Karate Kid. I'm just kind of here snipping away, just making little tiny adjustments. Because this is bonsai. It's just, you don't do this. I think people have the wrong impression that you're doing this to your trees every week or, you know, even every month maybe. But I do this to this tree, you know, once, twice a year. That's it. And this is when I'm doing it. So yeah, that was actually the biggest cut I've made. And on occasion I do take some of the lower growth off. But really it's a lot of just looking, you know, it's half cutting and half just observing. I'm not just going through and cutting. I'm really looking at the tree, and really it's quite a mental exercise for me, but a fun mental exercise. Occasionally I found dead branches that from years past, but for the most part not really. And there's little tiny bits of back budding, but they're often kind of on the crotches of branches. And I don't prune those off. I think there's value in leaving those on because you might want that later. And so actually I'm not sure if the camera's on it. If it's not, oh well. But there's some crotch growth right here. I'm not gonna prune that off. That might be a future branch that I'll encourage. I'll prune all this off and leave that. I don't know. So it's good to leave options, you know. And I kind of clean out. This one was so vigorous. There's a lot of congestion there, so I clean out the full old dead foliage a little bit. So anyways, yeah, that pad is done. So I took off, you know, probably half of it or even more. So I'm gonna keep working away, and I don't know if the camera caught that because I have it so zoomed up, but I'll come back later after I work on it more. All right, so I came across a situation I wanted to show because this kind of describes the process I often use with this tree, the combination of wire and pruning. So I was looking at I'm all the way to the top, really, the apex, and you know, you can see this part right here, and so you naturally think, why, this is a big, vigorous piece of growth that grew this year, within the last year. And so you think, well, to put it more, you know, in profile, I need to get rid of this, and this too, of course, but this, But I realized, you know, if I take a piece of wire and do that, bam, there's another branch right there. And that is really, I think that's the better solution to that, is not to prune this off, but actually to then create one more layer at the top of the tree. At the bottom of the tree here, I was gonna prune all this off, but I realized, you know, wait, what if I do this with wire and do that? I'm like, yeah, that's nice. That's what I want to do. This one right here, I might wire just a little bit. If I just take it from here and adjust it right to here, I can open up the trunk, but not prune this off, because yeah, I'm just really hesitant. You take all these years to prune these branches off, and sometimes you do make big prunes, and like I did with these lower branches, like took a ton off. But yeah, I think I try and favor wiring before pruning on this tree. And I think the important thing too is just to be consistent. I've kind of just moved consistently up the tree. So even if I maybe didn't prune exactly, like maybe I shouldn't have pruned that and that, well, it's at least consistent across the tree, and in coming years I can maybe learn from that and not prune the way I've pruned. But I think it's going well. I'm really pleased with the progress, and I'll show you at the end, I'm taking off quite a bit of the tree, honestly, but it still looks nice and full and healthy. So anyways, I am to the apex, so maybe I'll jump in there. Alright, so I'm to the apex, and like I just explained, I'm going to keep that. I think I'm going to do the same thing with this branch, and I might prune them later, but I'm gonna wire them and then prune them, because the way I orient them with the wire will dictate what I prune off. So rather than prune now, I'll wait. And I might not prune them that much, because when you wire, I think it weakens the branch a little bit, although these are just minuscule bends. This isn't putting stress on the tree. It's not like a major, there's lots of different like degrees of bending with wire, and this is like on a minimal, just, you know, I can barely push that with my finger and it bends, so nothing major there. So I'm going to take off this really vigorous top part, because that's probably all this year's growth right there. So that's one of the bigger cuts I made on this tree. Also, I'm gonna take this down quite a bit. And yeah, these do smell really good. Love the way cedar smells. Or Thuja. I know I heard, I can't remember who it was, but maybe it was Corwin with Greenwood Bonsai. How it drives the Europeans crazy how we call this cedar, and it's not cedar. It's Thuja. It's not a Cedrus. So, okay, yeah, so what's my process? So I'm gonna this is one big blob of foliage. I'm gonna, in addition to just kind of reducing it in size and volume, which is really simple, honestly, just taking off, you know, every other shoot or whatever, I'm going to kind of try and define a little, I'm gonna just take a section out here in the middle and kind of define a tiny little pad here and a pad here. And I guess this comes back to what I was talking about from Kiwa Yasuban, or Yasaman Kiwa. I'm killing his name. I gotta learn how to say that. It's Japanese. Just taking, you know, when there's these really congested parts, I just kind of get in there and I take out, you know, just kind of thinning the top. This is going to become a branch. At the same time, I don't want to take a ton off the apex, and you know, that might be good, honestly. I'll have to step back and really study it to see how much I want to take off. Again, I think the key is just when you start, you're just kind of consistent across the tree. Yeah, so that might be enough. I think it might be time now to do the wire. All right, here it is, folks. I lost track of time. This is great. I was so engrossed in this tree. An hour and a half passed, and really happy with the result, though. I'll bring it in closer to show the wiring that I did. But I did some more wiring, I did some more pruning, and yeah, this is how it turned out. So let me take you in. Alright, so I'll take you in here and show you the wiring. So I wired this branch part of the branch here down. Oh, more fell out. And this was really just to anchor, although I positioned that too. So that's the first piece of wire. I did wire this little piece of foliage over to the side. These two, it was easy right here. This is actually the easiest wiring I did because there's no foliage. So did that. And then the top, like I talked about, I wired this down. It was kind of part of the apex. Now it's a new branch, a new level, as well as this side right here. And this little back branch, I thought it'd be nice to extend the tree. It's a little flat, so I want to extend it this way to the back. Yeah, so, and here's what I took off. And I estimate probably about 25%, 20%, 25%. So by no means a small pruning, actually more than I anticipated, but I got going and it still looks very, full. And I'm not worried about the amount of foliage I took off. But yeah, really like it. It's really coming along, and we'll see how it handles this pruning. So it looks like next year how it grows, but I'm confident it will respond well. So I was gonna do another tree, my little tiny tree, but this took an hour, 2 hours longer than I anticipated. So I'm gonna end it here, and I'll maybe we'll do that as a separate little smaller video. Continue Thuja week. Maybe I'll just publish 3 videos in a row with Thuja. Until next time, happy bonsaiing.